New York, Harlem. In the endless struggle between Bumpy Johnson and the Italian Mafia, a fatal mistake is made. A store belonging to the son of a powerful New York prosecutor goes up in flames. That night throws Harlem into absolute turmoil, leaving only one question: who will end up behind bars for someone else's mistake? Subscribe right now if you're interested in the legends of crime bosses and their lives. Make yourself comfortable. We're about to begin. 742. Harlem wakes in layers, steel shutters, delivery trucks, coffee poured into thick white cups, men sweeping yesterday from sidewalks that will be dirty again by noon. Bumpy Johnson sits beside a window on 138th Street and watches the neighborhood become valuable. Not beautiful, valuable. There is a difference. Beauty belongs to whoever looks at it. Value belongs to whoever can hold it. Across the table, a newspaper is folded beside untouched eggs. 3 blocks east, Italians control 2 gambling rooms. 5 blocks south, Bumpy controls 4. Nobody smiles about it. Nobody needs to. Peace between enemies is rarely friendship. Usually it is arithmetic, and arithmetic survives only while both sides keep counting. 831. The Italian side has rules, not written ones. Written rules are for courts. Street rules live in memory. You do not touch families. You do not burn homes. You do not shoot into crowds. You do not destroy a man's legitimate business unless you are ready to admit you have declared war. Bumpy knows their rules. They know his. That is why the conflict works. Ugly, occasionally bloody, but contained. A fence can separate 2 angry dogs better than affection ever could. For years, Bumpy and the Italians have tested that fence. A number runner disappears. A shipment changes hands. A bookmaker suddenly remembers who owns his loyalty. Pressure, answer, never chaos. Chaos is bad business, and both sides, for all their hatred, understand business. 917. Across town, 4 Italian men sit inside a gray Buick. None of them are important enough to appear in newspapers. That makes them useful. The driver is Victor Sanzone, 38, heavy shoulders, broken nose, a man who treats silence like permission. Beside him sits Angelo Ferri, younger, narrow-faced, always chewing the inside of his cheek. In the back are Peter Lanza and Rocco Bellini. Between their shoes rests a canvas bag, 2 pistols, 1 crowbar, 1 glass bottle filled with gasoline. They are not going to kill anyone. That is what they were told. The store belongs to Bumpy. That is what they were told too. Take the cash, smash the place, burn enough to send a message. Messages are cheaper than funerals when the information is correct. 1004. The store is called Harlem Fine Goods, a narrow place between a pharmacy and a tailor. Leather wallets, imported pens, cigarette cases, small radios, expensive things sold to people who want to look richer than they are. Victor parks across the street. He watches for 12 minutes. No guards, no familiar faces, no one he recognizes from Bumpy's organization. Angelo notices. That bother you? Victor keeps watching. No. It should. Experience does not usually shout. It taps once, then waits to see if you are stupid. At 10:16, a delivery man leaves. At 10:21, an elderly woman enters. At 10:26, she leaves carrying a wrapped box. At 10:29, Victor opens his door. Wrong decisions often begin with ordinary movements, a hand on a handle, a shoe on pavement, a man deciding he has seen enough. 10:34. The bell above the store door rings. The clerk looks up. His name is Nathaniel Vale, 29 years old, thin, dark hair, white shirt with the sleeves rolled evenly to the elbows. He is not the owner. He manages the store for him. Nathaniel sees 4 men enter and understands before anyone speaks. Understanding always arrives before proof. That is why fear moves faster than evidence. Victor locks the door. Peter turns the sign from open to closed. Nathaniel steps backward. We don't keep much cash here. Victor walks toward the counter. That wasn't the question. There wasn't a question. Victor almost smiles. Young clerks sometimes mistake grammar for courage. Then he notices a telephone beneath the counter. He reaches across, pulls the cord from the wall. Now the room belongs to whoever entered prepared. 10:38. Angelo goes behind the counter. Nathaniel moves to stop him. Rocco catches the clerk by the collar and drives him into a display case. Glass cracks. Nathaniel drops to one knee. Victor turns sharply. No beating. Rocco looks surprised. He grabbed him. No beating. The order came from above. Take money. Break property. Burn the back room. Nobody dies. Nobody gets crippled. Street rules. Even violence has accounting. Nathaniel rises too quickly. Blood runs from his forehead. He sees Peter pulling drawers open. He sees Angelo filling the canvas bag. Then he sees Victor remove the gasoline bottle. Something changes in his face. Money can be replaced. Fire makes people irrational. Nathaniel lunges across the counter. Victor catches him. The bottle falls. Does not break. That single sound saves everyone for approximately 30 seconds. 10:40. Nathaniel punches Victor in the mouth. A bad decision, a brave one. Those are often neighbors. Victor stumbles backward. Rocco grabs Nathaniel and throws him against a wooden cabinet. Peter shouts. Angelo moves in. Too many hands, too much noise. Control disappears in pieces. Nathaniel swings again. His elbow catches Angelo above the eye. Angelo reacts without thinking. He drives Nathaniel backward, hard. Nathaniel crashes through the door leading to the stockroom. Shelves collapse, boxes fall. Victor wipes blood from his lip. Enough. Nobody hears him. That's the problem with violence. The first command begins it. After that, violence starts issuing commands of its own. Rocco kicks the fallen clerk once, then again. Victor grabs his coat. I said enough. This time Rocco stops. Nathaniel does not move. 10:43. The gasoline bottle is rolled beneath the table. Victor retrieves it. His mouth is swelling. His judgment is shrinking. He looks toward the stockroom. Nathaniel lies behind fallen shelving. Still breathing, barely visible. Victor tells himself the clerk can crawl out. Men tell themselves many things when they need the next action to feel reasonable. Peter pours gasoline across stacked cartons. Angelo takes out a matchbook. Front two? Victor shakes his head. Back only. A warning, nothing more. Angelo strikes one match. Small flame. Small enough to fit beneath a thumbnail. He drops it. Fire moves across the floor faster than anger. Victor watches for 2 seconds, then turns. Go. They leave through the front. The door locks behind them. Inside, Nathaniel Vale opens his eyes. The first thing he sees is orange. The second is smoke. 10:49. A woman across the street smells the fire. Notices smoke behind the windows. Screams. A pharmacist runs outside carrying an extinguisher too small for the problem. Someone breaks the front glass with a tire iron. Air enters. The fire grows. Fire likes help. People usually give it some by accident. Nathaniel wakes beneath a shelf. His left leg will not move. He pulls once, twice. Wood presses across his thigh. Smoke sits low, then lower. He tries to shout. Nothing useful comes out. Outside, strangers throw water through shattered windows. One man crawls inside on his hands and knees. He finds Nathaniel by following coughing. 2 more men enter. They lift the shelf. Nathaniel screams when they drag him. His shirt is burning at the shoulder. By the time he reaches the sidewalk, half the block is watching. 11:12. Bumpy hears about the fire from Malcolm Avery. Malcolm is 44, broad forehead, patient voice. He has worked beside Bumpy long enough to know that bad news should arrive clean. No drama, no decoration. The Italians hit a store on Lenox. Bumpy looks up from a ledger. Mine? They thought so. A pause. That answer matters. Bumpy closes the ledger. Thought? Malcolm nods. Harlem Fine Goods. Bumpy knows the name, not the ownership. He owns no part of it, not directly, not indirectly, not through anyone. Who told them it was mine? We don't know. And the store? Burned. Bumpy's eyes stop moving. People? One clerk hurt badly. Silence enters the room. Silence here is not absence. It is calculation beginning. 11:29. The first instinct is retaliation. That is what Malcolm expects. Not emotionally, structurally. Italians burned what they believed was Bumpy's property. That is a line. Lines exist so everyone can understand the price of crossing them. Bumpy stands, walks to the window. Below, Harlem continues without asking permission. What do the Italians know? Malcolm considers it. Probably that they hit the wrong place. Probably is a lazy word. I can confirm. Do that. Malcolm reaches for his coat. Bumpy stops him. And find out who owns Harlem. We can do both. No. Malcolm looks back. Bumpy's voice stays flat. Find the owner first. Malcolm leaves. Bumpy remains at the glass. Most men look at a fire and ask who started it. Bumpy asks who will arrive after the smoke. That answer is usually more expensive. 12:06. At Harlem Hospital, Nathaniel Vale is alive. That surprises two doctors. His left femur is broken, 3 ribs fractured, deep burns across his shoulder, arm, and upper back. Smoke damage, a crushed hand. He will live. Living does not always mean escaping. A police detective asks questions while a nurse tries to remove him. Nathaniel can barely speak. 4. 4 men? A nod. Black? White? White. Italian. Nathaniel closes his eyes. The detective waits. People think patience is kindness. Police know patience is pressure without fingerprints. Nathaniel whispers. They said, Johnson. The detective leans closer. Bumpy Johnson? Nathaniel loses consciousness before answering. The detective writes the name anyway. Paper does not need certainty, only ink. And ink has started wars that bullets could not afford. 12:41. Malcolm returns with a folder. Not thick. Thick folders usually mean old trouble. Thin folders mean fresh trouble. He places it on Bumpy's desk. Harlem Fine Goods is owned by Charles Fenwick. Bumpy waits. Malcolm continues. 26, Columbia Law graduate, bought it 11 months ago. So? Malcolm does not sit. His father is Samuel Fenwick. The room changes. Bumpy knows the name immediately. Everyone with money in New York knows it. Everyone without money knows it too. Samuel Fenwick, special prosecutor, organized crime, racketeering, public corruption. A man who has spent 3 years telling newspapers that criminal organizations survive because ordinary people are afraid to speak. Bumpy looks at the folder. His son? Only son. Bumpy leans back. The Italians thought they burned Bumpy's store. Instead, they burned the prosecutor's son's store and almost killed his employee. That is not a mistake. That is weather. 13:08. Bumpy asks one question. Does Fenwick know yet? Malcolm answers carefully. His son called him from the hospital. Bumpy looks toward the clock. 13:08. Time is not numbers. It is alignment. A wrong store. A wounded clerk. A prosecutor whose career depends on appearing stronger than the men he investigates. 3 separate facts. Put them together and they become a machine. Bumpy stands. He'll come after whoever did it. Of course. No. Bumpy turns. He'll come after everyone. Malcolm understands. A prosecutor cannot tear apart one Italian crew without touching gambling rooms, unions, clubs, cops, bookmakers, drivers, landlords. And once authorities begin opening walls, they rarely stop because the first rat ran somewhere else. A city investigation is not a knife. It is flood water. It enters every basement, including Bumpy's. 1336. Across Manhattan, Samuel Fenwick enters his son's hospital room. He is 59, gray hair, square shoulders, a prosecutor who dresses like every photograph may become evidence. Charles sits beside the bed. His store is gone. His employee may never use one hand normally again. Samuel asks questions, not father questions, prosecutor questions. Who knew you owned it? Everyone on the paperwork. Any threats? No. Insurance dispute? No. Debt? No. Johnson? Charles looks confused. What? Bumpy Johnson. I've never met him. Samuel watches his son's face. Truth has a rhythm. Lies do too. Charles is telling the truth. Samuel steps into the corridor. A detective approaches carrying a notebook. The clerk said one name before he passed out. Samuel takes the notebook, reads. Johnson, one word. Sometimes one word is enough to give anger a direction. 1402. Malcolm meets a bookmaker named Louis Serrano in the back booth of a luncheonette. Serrano is Italian. Not made, not important. Exactly the sort of man who knows things important men believe nobody knows. Malcolm orders coffee. Serrano does not. Your people did Harlem? Malcolm asks. Serrano shakes his head too quickly. Don't know. Malcolm looks at him. Nothing else. Silence works best when the other man understands what it costs. Serrano rubs his jaw. They thought it was Johnson's. Who is they? You know I can't. Malcolm begins standing. Serrano whispers. Victor Sanzone's crew. Malcolm sits again. Whose order? Serrano looks toward the counter. I don't know. Malcolm believes him. That is worse. A crew acted on bad information. Bad information inside organized crime is rarely an accident. Someone had pointed a loaded mistake toward Harlem. 1449 Bumpy receives Malcolm's report. Victor Sanzone. 3 others, a mid-level crew under an Italian captain named Carlo Battista. New names, new problem. Bumpy has dealt with Battista twice. Neither time required a funeral. That counts as professionalism. Did Battista order the fire? Serrano doesn't know. Find out. Malcolm nods. Bumpy opens the Harlan folder again. Charles Fenwick, 26. No gambling, no numbers, no political money, no known relationship with Bumpy. Nothing. Bumpy taps one finger against the page. The Italians made a mistake. Malcolm agrees. Bumpy looks up. Mistakes have causes. You think someone fed them the address? I think nobody accidentally points Italians at the prosecutor's son. Malcolm's expression hardens. Set up? Maybe. Bumpy closes the folder. Maybe is acceptable once. After that, it becomes an excuse. 1521 Samuel Fenwick holds a press conference outside the hospital. Cameras, microphones, men in hats, women with notebooks. He says very little. That makes every sentence heavier. My son is fortunate. Flashbulbs. Mr. Vale is fighting for his recovery. More flashbulbs. This city will not tolerate organized criminals settling their disputes by burning businesses and crippling innocent citizens, a reporter shouts. Are you referring to Ellsworth Johnson? Fenwick pauses. A pause is useful. It lets newspapers write the accusation for you. We are following evidence. Another reporter. Was Johnson's name mentioned by a witness? Fenwick does not answer. He does something stronger. He walks away. By 1532, the first newsroom has its headline: Bumpy Johnson link probed in Harlem fire. Facts travel slowly. Suspicion owns a faster car. 1558 Bumpy reads the headline before the paper reaches most newsstands. Malcolm watches him. So it already started. Bumpy folds the page. No. He places it on the desk. It hasn't. Malcolm frowns. What do you call this? A knock. Bumpy walks toward the cabinet containing ledgers from businesses that officially do not know him. The door comes next. He studies the shelves. If Fenwick investigates broadly, detectives will subpoena landlords, question club owners, pressure bookmakers, audit licenses, freeze bank accounts, pull old arrests into new rooms. The Italians will get hit. Bumpy will get hit. Independent operators will get hit hardest. Then everyone gets nervous. Nervous men make fast decisions. Fast decisions create bodies. Bodies create headlines. Headlines create politicians. Politicians create task forces. The cycle feeds itself. A burned store can become a season. 1633. Malcolm asks the obvious question. We tell Fenwick who did it. Bumpy turns slowly. No. Malcolm thinks he misheard. We know the crew. We know 4 names. That's enough to point him. And then? He goes after them. Bumpy gives a small shake of his head. He goes after Batista. Good. Then Batista's people close ranks. Malcolm says nothing. Fenwick pressures everyone connected to them. Italians answer pressure with pressure. Someone runs. Someone talks. Someone gets scared. Someone gets killed. Bumpy steps closer. And while that happens, every cop with a badge decides Harlem is open for digging. Malcolm looks at him. So we protect Italians? Bumpy's face does not change. No. A beat. We protect the board. A chessboard does not care which piece you hate, only whether removing it destroys the position. 1704. Bumpy sends Malcolm away, then calls in another man. Elias Boone, 37, quiet, precise. Never asks why until the work is done. Bumpy gives him 3 instructions. Find everything police already know about Harlan. Find whether the clerk identified anyone. Find how quickly Fenwick can form a special team. Elias listens. Anything else? Bumpy looks at him. Yes. Sir, do not touch the Italians. Elias shows the smallest reaction, a blink. That is all. They burned the store. I know. They think it was ours. I know. And we leave them alone. For now. Elias nods. People who work for powerful men learn that understanding is not always part of obedience. He leaves. Bumpy checks the clock. 1707. The day is moving. He needs to move faster without appearing to move at all. 1746. Victor Sanzone learns who owned the store. He is inside a basement social club when Carlo Batista closes the door. Batista is 51. Thin silver hair, dark suit, no jewelry. Men who need decoration are usually trying to compensate for something. Batista places a newspaper on the table. Victor reads the headline. His face drains. You told me Johnson. Batista stares at him. I told you what I was told. Who told you? That is now my question. Victor swallows. What do we do? Batista leans forward. Nothing. But Fenwick, nothing. Victor looks confused. Batista's voice drops. A mistake becomes a crime when you panic. He taps the newspaper. If Johnson knows, he may use it. Victor nods. Batista does not. That is what you should be afraid of. Enemies are most dangerous when they possess something they have not yet spent. 1815. Elias returns. Fenwick has requested emergency authority to coordinate city detectives, fire investigators, and state racketeering personnel. Not approved yet. Likely tomorrow. The clerk's statement is weak. 4 white men, 1 mention of Johnson, nothing identifying Bumpy personally, no license plates, no photographs, no fingerprints recovered yet. Bumpy listens. Yet, he says. Elias nods. Fenwick's people are canvassing the block. What about my name? They're asking everyone. Bumpy walks to the window. Below, evening fills Harlem with headlights. They need something physical. Probably. Bumpy turns. Elias recognizes the expression. It is not anger. Anger spends energy. This is decision. Bumpy asks, "What you'd be small enough to fail in court?" Elias does not answer. The question feels wrong. Bumpy repeats it. "What points at me without proving me?" Now Elias understands why he was called, and wishes he did not. 1827. Elias closes the office door. "You want them looking at us?" Bumpy sits. "For a while." Elias remains standing. "That is not a small thing." "No. Fenwick hates you." "I know." "He has been waiting for a reason." "I know." "He gets 1 piece and he will build 10 more around it." "That is his job." Elias stares at Bumpy. "And ours?" "To survive his enthusiasm." The room stays quiet. Elias finally says, "You want false evidence." Bumpy looks at him. "Not false." Elias frowns. "Then what?" "Real things, bad conclusions." That distinction matters to Bumpy. A forged trail can collapse. A misunderstood trail can survive forever. He gives Elias the outline. Not enough for conviction, enough for direction. A breadcrumb, nothing more. Elias listens without interrupting. By the end, his face has changed. Not fear, disbelief. 1844. The first item is a matchbook. Red cover, gold lettering, the cotton crown. One of Bumpy's clubs. Thousands exist. Customers carry them everywhere, meaningless alone, useful near gasoline. The second is a delivery receipt from a liquor distributor that supplies 3 Bumpy-connected businesses. Again real, again weak. The third is more dangerous, a tire impression from a sedan registered to a shell company loosely tied to one of Bumpy's legal enterprises. Not the getaway car, just a similar vehicle. Elias listens. That can get somebody arrested. Yes. Maybe more. Yes. You're building Fenwick a story. No. Bumpy's eyes remain calm. I'm giving him a beginning. And if he writes the ending himself? Bumpy leans back. Then we find out whether I misjudged him. There are gambles men take for money. Others they take because every alternative is worse. 1903. Elias refuses for the first time, not loudly. That would make it easier. No. Bumpy looks at him. Elias continues. I'll take a bullet if you tell me. Bumpy says nothing. I'll carry money, move people, lie to cops, whatever you need. Still nothing. But I won't build a case against you. Bumpy's expression does not harden. That makes the moment heavier. You think loyalty means preventing me from making decisions. I think loyalty means preventing you from walking into a cell. Bumpy rises. A cell is a room. Elias shakes his head. Not when Fenwick locks it. Bumpy walks past him, stops at the door. Tomorrow morning, that prosecutor will decide where to aim. He looks back. If he aims at the Italians, Harlem gets torn open. And if he aims at you? Bumpy answers quietly. Then he looks where I want him looking. 1929. Malcolm returns and finds Elias waiting in the hall. One look is enough. What happened? Elias answers. He wants us to point the fire at him. Malcolm thinks he is joking. Elias does not joke. They enter together. Bumpy is reading a zoning map. Malcolm places both hands on the desk. Tell me he misunderstood. Bumpy continues reading. He understood perfectly. Why? Not yet. Malcolm's jaw tightens. We're not children. No. Then explain it. Bumpy folds the map. Fenwick wants an enemy. So give him the Italians. That gives him a war. They started it. They made a mistake. A mistake nearly killed a man. Bumpy looks up. Yes. Malcolm waits for anger. None comes. Bumpy says punishing stupidity and surviving it are two different jobs. That is all he gives them, and that is what frightens Malcolm most. 2011 elsewhere, Carlo Batista receives a telephone call. No names, no greeting, a male voice. You hit Fenwick's boy. Batista's fingers tighten around the receiver. Who is this? The line continues as if he did not speak. Johnson knows. Batista stands. How? Click. Deadline. Batista remains still. Someone knew the target was wrong. Someone knew Bumpy knew, and someone wanted Batista to know both. That means the mistake is being watched. He calls Victor. Where did the Harlem information come from? Victor answers after hesitation. A guy named Emile. Last name? Don't know. Batista closes his eyes. Street organizations do not collapse because enemies are clever. They collapse because somebody somewhere says, I don't know. Batista orders every man involved in the fire brought in, not punished, questioned. For now. Fear is useful only before it becomes panic. 2048 Bumpy eats dinner alone in the office. Roast beef, potatoes, cold coffee. He finishes half. Food tastes different when choices begin to acquire consequences. Malcolm sits opposite him. No plate. You trust the Italians? Bumpy cuts the meat. No. Then why risk anything for them? I'm not. It looks exactly like that. Bumpy chews, swallows. Looking and being are cousins, not twins. Malcolm exhales. Fenwick could bury us. Could. You keep saying that like it doesn't matter. It matters. Bumpy places the fork down. That is why it works. Malcolm stares. Bumpy says nothing more. Power is sometimes explanation. More often, power is the ability to delay explanation until everyone else has exhausted their guesses. Tonight, Malcolm has guesses. Bumpy has a plan. Only one of those can survive contact with morning. 21:22. Elias follows the order, not because he agrees, because the order remains. He takes one cotton crown matchbook, a legitimate invoice, a handwritten parking stub from a garage used by several Bumpy-connected drivers, nothing fabricated, nothing stolen from police, nothing that says Bumpy Johnson. Everything that whispers him. Elias places the items into a plain envelope. He stares at it for a long time. Evidence is strange. Objects do not accuse people. People teach objects how. He calls a trusted runner named Theodore Graves, 23. New enough to follow instructions, old enough to understand danger. Elias gives him the envelope. Do exactly what I say. Theodore looks inside. His face changes. What is this? Elias closes the flap. A mistake. Whose? Elias answers. Ours, if you get caught. 22:03. The fire scene is guarded, not heavily. A patrol car at the corner. One fire inspector inside. A detective speaking with the pharmacist next door. Theodore approaches from the alley. No hat, dark work coat. He carries a toolbox. People ignore men carrying tools. Tools imply purpose. Purpose discourages questions. He enters the rear courtyard through the tailor's basement, climbs a service stair, stops behind a broken fence. From there, he can see the blackened rear window of Harlem Fine Goods. His instructions are simple. Do not enter. Do not plant everything together. That looks planted. Leave one object where weather could have moved it. One where a shoe might have carried it. One where tomorrow's search can discover it naturally. Good deception does not create certainty. It creates coincidence and then lets frightened people finish the work. 2217. Theodore drops the matchbook near a drain behind the building. Too easy. He hates it. He places the parking stub beneath a damaged crate. Better. The invoice is hardest. Paper looks deliberate wherever it lands. He waits. A detective steps into the alley, smoking. Theodore freezes behind a brick column. Footsteps. Closer. The detective throws the cigarette down, walks toward the drain. For 1 second, Theodore believes the man has seen him. Instead, the detective urinates against the wall. Street dignity is often destroyed by ordinary needs. Theodore waits. The detective leaves. Then Theodore notices something he was not told to expect. A man stands at the far end of the alley, hat low, long coat, watching. Not police, not fire department. Theodore cannot see the face, but the man has seen him. 2221. Theodore walks, not fast. Fast admits guilt. The watcher stays where he is. Theodore reaches the sidewalk, turns left. At the next corner, he looks into a shop window. Reflection. The man is following. 30 yards back. Theodore continues. Crosses Lenox. The watcher crosses. Theodore enters a crowded bar. Uses the rear door. Runs through a kitchen, out into another alley. This time he runs properly. There's a difference between hiding fear and respecting danger. He reaches 137th Street. A car turns behind him, black sedan, slow, too slow. Theodore cuts between 2 apartment buildings, climbs a fence, tears his coat, drops into a yard. The sedan does not follow. By the time he reaches Elias, Theodore is sweating. There was somebody there. Elias does not ask if he is sure. Describe him. 2246. The description means nothing. White male, 40 maybe, medium height, dark coat, gray hat. New York contains 50,000 versions of that man. Elias reports it to Bumpy. Malcolm is still there. So someone watched us plant evidence, Bumpy corrects him. Someone watched Theodore. Same difference? No. Bumpy stands. If he knew what Theodore was doing, he would have stopped him or followed him here. Elias says he followed him halfway. Bumpy looks at Theodore. Did you lose him? Yes. Certain? I doubled twice. Bumpy studies him. Good. Theodore expects praise. None comes. Bumpy turns to Elias. Change nothing. Elias cannot believe it. Someone saw him. Change nothing. Malcolm steps forward. You don't even know who. Bumpy's answer is immediate. That is exactly why. Unknown men become useful when they believe they are unseen. 2314. At the hospital, Nathaniel Vale wakes again. His throat feels cut from the inside. Samuel Fenwick sits beside him. No notebook this time. Nathaniel looks toward him. You're Charles's father. Yes. Nathaniel tries to sit. Cannot. Fenwick leans closer. You said Johnson. Nathaniel's eyes tighten. I heard the name. From which man? I don't know. What exactly did he say? Nathaniel searches through pain. Fire damages memory differently than lies. Images return before sequence. Broken glass, gasoline, a shoe against his ribs, then words. One man saying, "This is Johnson's place." Nathaniel whispers it. Fenwick remains still. Not Johnson ordered it. Not Johnson's men. Johnson's place. Important difference. A prosecutor should love differences. A father sometimes does not. Fenwick asks, did any of them say Bumpy? Nathaniel closes his eyes. I don't remember. Fenwick nods. Memory has not helped him, but anger has. 2352 Carlo Battista questions Victor Senzone for the 3rd time. Same room, different temperature. Who gave you a meal? Victor rubs his swollen lip. A bartender. Name? Leon Pescara. Batista writes it down. Where? The Meridian. When? Monday. What did Emil say? Victor thinks. That Johnson bought Harlan through somebody else. Said cash moved from one of his clubs. What club? He didn't say. Batista looks up. And you believed him? Victor's shame answers first. He knew other things. What things? 2 numbers locations, a driver, a storage room. Were they true? Yes. Batista sets the pencil down. That is how good lies travel. They pay for themselves with truth. Find Emil. Victor nods. Batista stops him at the door. And Victor? Yes? If Johnson wanted revenge, we would already know. Victor waits. Batista says, his silence is worse. 019. Bumpy receives a telephone call at home. Malcolm. They found the matchbook. Bumpy looks at the bedside clock. 019. Fast. A patrolman spotted it near the drain. Anything else? Not yet. Fenwick? Still at the hospital. Bumpy walks to the window. Night makes Harlem look simple. Lights, roofs, moving cars. Darkness hides ownership. Morning restores complications. Malcolm asks, "You still want this?" Bumpy answers, "Yes." A pause. "You know what comes next?" "Yes." "They'll search our places." "Yes." "They'll bring you in." "Probably." Malcolm waits, then finally asks, "And if they find something real?" Bumpy looks down at the street. Every powerful man lives surrounded by things that become crimes when interpreted by the correct office. That, Bumpy says, is why we clean before sunrise. The call ends. Movement begins. 103 doors open across Harlem. Ledgers move. Cash changes rooms. A pistol disappears from a desk drawer and reappears inside a furnace. Not because it touched the Harlan fire. Because tomorrow does not care what yesterday was about. Malcolm coordinates 3 locations. Elias handles 2. Bumpy stays still. The boss moving at night attracts attention. The organization moving without him looks like routine. Men carry boxes through kitchens. Women replace accounting books. A landlord receives a telephone call and suddenly remembers a lease differently. Nothing dramatic, no running, no shouting. Survival is mostly housekeeping performed before strangers arrive. Bumpy watches a clock. 1:17, 1:39, 2:04. Time isn't numbers, it's alignment. By dawn, Fenwick will have his clue. By dawn, Bumpy intends to have nothing else worth finding. 238 Samuel Fenwick sits in his office downtown. His tie is loosened. His son has gone home. Nathaniel remains hospitalized. On the desk lies a clear evidence bag. Inside, the cotton crown, red matchbook, gold lettering. A detective explains. Club is associated with Johnson. Fenwick knows. Everybody knows. Fingerprints? Partial, too smudged. Blood? No. Could have been there before the fire. Yes. Fenwick turns the bag in his hand. Cheap cardboard. Expensive implications. One matchbook proves nothing. But prosecutors rarely begin with proof. They begin with permission to look. Fenwick places the bag down. Get me everything on the cotton crown. The detective nods. And Johnson? Fenwick looks toward the dark window. Not yet. He wants Bumpy comfortable. Comfort opens doors that fear locks. At least, that is what Fenwick believes. 6:12. Bumpy returns to the office before sunrise. Malcolm is already there. You sleep? No. Good. Malcolm does not appreciate the joke. Elias arrives 5 minutes later. The invoice is still there. What about the parking stub? Still there. Bumpy pours coffee. They'll find both. Malcolm watches him. You sound pleased. No. Then what? Bumpy takes one sip. Interested? In getting arrested? in seeing how hungry Fenwick is. Malcolm shakes his head. You're testing him. I'm measuring him. That distinction isn't going to help in a cell. Bumpy sets the cup down. Cells are useful. Malcolm laughs once, no humor in it. For what? Bumpy looks at him. For finding out who moves while you can't. The answer lands differently. For the first time, Malcolm wonders whether Fenwick is only one part of the plan. 728 police return to Harlem Fine Goods with daylight. Daylight makes destruction look more official. Burned shelves, collapsed ceiling, black water, glass like dirty ice. A fire investigator finds the invoice beneath charred paper near the rear room. Legitimate company, legitimate distributor. 2 addresses connected indirectly to Bumpy-controlled businesses. He bags it. 23 minutes later, another officer finds the parking stub. Same general network. Nobody cheers. Real investigators distrust convenient evidence. But convenient evidence still gets written down. 3 separate objects, 3 small connections. No single one means much. Together they begin to feel like shape. Humans hate random points. They connect them. By 8:02, Samuel Fenwick has all 3 photographs on his desk. He studies them. Matchbook, invoice, parking stub, not proof. But proof comes later. First comes pressure. 8:19. Fenwick signs the request. Search warrants for 2 businesses linked to Bumpy. Subpoenas for financial records. Authority to question employees connected to the Cotton Crown. His deputy hesitates. This is thin. Fenwick does not look up. So was Capone's first tax return. That's not the same. No. Fenwick signs another page. It never is. His deputy studies him. You think Johnson burned the store? Fenwick stops writing. A long pause. I think somebody thought that store belonged to Johnson. That's different. Yes. Then why Johnson? Fenwick caps the pen. Because if I shake the tree, I want to see what falls. Paper slides across the desk. Paper is colder than steel. It does not need anger. It only needs a signature. At 8:22, messengers leave the building. The machinery begins. 9:01. The first raid hits a social club Bumpy does not own on paper. 6 detectives, 2 state investigators, 1 photographer, customers against the wall, drawers opened, cash counted, names taken. At 9:07, another team enters a small warehouse tied to a trucking company Bumpy uses. At 9:11, police arrive at the Cotton Crown. Doors locked, employees separated, liquor records seized. Harlem notices. Harlem always notices. A man buying cigarettes sees police. A woman opening a beauty shop sees police. A driver sees 2 unmarked cars. Information travels without telephones. By 9:20, half the neighborhood knows Fenwick is moving on Bumpy. By 9:25, the Italians know too. Batista receives the news without speaking. Victor asks, "Did Johnson give us up?" Batista looks at him. "No." "Then why are they hitting him?" Batista has no answer, and that troubles him more than an accusation would. 9:47, Malcolm enters Bumpy's office fast, not running, close. They hit 3 places. Bumpy keeps reading. Anything? Nothing important. Then they did us a favor. Malcolm stares. You planned this and now you call it a favor? Bumpy folds the paper. Free inventory. That's not funny. No. Another telephone rings. Elias answers. Listens. His face changes. He covers the receiver. They're at the garage. Malcolm turns to Bumpy. That wasn't on the warrants we expected. Bumpy rises. For the first time, something shifts in his expression. Not fear. Adjustment. What garage? West 141st. Bumpy's eyes narrow. There are things at West 141st that have nothing to do with Harlan. Nothing to do with Italians, nothing to do with fire. The kind of things prosecutors love because they belong to another story, and another story can still put a man in prison. 10:06. The garage door rises under police hands. Inside, 3 sedans, tool cabinets, spare plates, receipts, a locked office. The warrant technically concerns vehicles linked to the fire investigation. Technically is a dangerous word. Once police are inside, visibility becomes opportunity. A detective notices a steel cabinet. Locked. He asks for the key. The garage manager says he does not have one. The detective smiles. Then we'll help? Across Harlem, Malcolm waits beside Bumpy. Nobody speaks. A telephone sits between them. Bumpy had calculated the matchbook, the invoice, the parking stub. He had calculated Fenwick's anger, his appetite, even the raids. He had not calculated West 141st this early. Control is not predicting everything. Control is knowing which mistake can still be survived. The telephone rings. Elias picks it up, listens, then looks at Bumpy. They open the cabinet. 10:09. Inside the steel cabinet are envelopes, registration papers, old betting sheets, 2 account books, and a revolver wrapped in cloth. The detective removes each item carefully. The account books are old, not catastrophic. The betting sheets can be explained. The revolver cannot. Serial number filed, no registration. A weapon with no history is not innocent. It is only silent. At Bumpy's office, Elias gives the report. Malcolm closes his eyes. That gun. Bumpy says nothing. You know what's attached to it? Yes. It wasn't supposed to still be there. No. Malcolm turns toward Elias. Who missed it? Bumpy raises one hand. Not now. Blame is useful after survival. Before survival, blame is just noise. He asks, Did they find the books? Yes. Bumpy nods. Then Fenwick just got more than I gave him. 10:33 Samuel Fenwick receives the garage report. The revolver interests him. The books interest him more. Numbers, initials, dates. No clear crimes yet. But organized crime does not often leave confessions. It leaves patterns. Patterns become subpoenas. Subpoenas become frightened accountants. Frightened accountants become witnesses. Fenwick feels the investigation expanding. Exactly what Bumpy feared. Exactly what Bumpy invited. Fenwick orders the garage manager detained. 2 drivers picked up. A bookkeeper questioned, then he stops. Bring Johnson in. His deputy looks at him. On what? Fenwick taps the evidence photographs, questioning. He can refuse. He can. Fenwick looks at the revolver report, then asks him about the firearm. His deputy nods. Fenwick's eyes remain on the page. A prosecutor does not need the whole bridge. Sometimes he only needs enough boards to make the other man start walking. 11:04. 2 detectives arrive for Bumpy. No sirens. Sirens are for spectacle. Fenwick wants cooperation to look voluntary. 1 detective removes his hat. Mr. Johnson. Bumpy stands. Malcolm steps closer. The detective continues. Mr. Fenwick would like to speak with you. Bumpy buttons his coat. Malcolm says, You don't have to go. I know. You have counsel. I know. The detective watches both men. Bumpy picks up his hat. All right. Malcolm follows him to the hallway. Quietly. This is going too far. Bumpy stops. Maybe. You planted crumbs. They found a gun. Yes. Then stop it. Bumpy adjusts his cuff. How? Tell them the Italians. Bumpy looks at Malcolm for a long second, then says, No. The elevator arrives. Metal doors open. Bumpy steps inside. Sometimes the most frightening decision is the one a man has enough time to reconsider, and does not. 11:39 Samuel Fenwick meets Bumpy in a plain interrogation room. No dramatic lamp, no smoke, no shouting, cheap table, 2 chairs, a pitcher of water. Power prefers ordinary furniture. Fenwick enters carrying a folder. Bumpy looks at the clock. 11:39. Fenwick notices. You always watch time? Only when somebody else is spending mine. Fenwick sits, places the matchbook photograph on the table, then the invoice, then the parking stub. Bumpy looks at each. No reaction. Fenwick slides the revolver report forward. This time Bumpy looks slightly longer. Fenwick sees it. Good prosecutors collect fractions. You know that weapon? No. Know the garage? Yes. Know the store? Yes. Own it? No. Did you order anyone to damage it? No. Fenwick leans back. You answer very easily. Bumpy looks at him. You're asking easy questions. It's 12:14. Fenwick changes direction. Who did it? Bumpy says nothing. Fenwick waits. Silence against silence. 2 men trying to see whose costs more. You know. Bumpy looks at the water pitcher. Fenwick continues. 4 Italian males enter a store they believe belongs to you. They rob it, burn it, nearly kill a clerk. No answer. Then evidence connected to you appears at the scene. Bumpy raises his eyes. Sounds confusing. Fenwick almost smiles. My son owns that store. I heard. You heard? Yes. And? And what? Fenwick's jaw tightens for the first time. You expect me to believe you have no opinion? Bumpy's answer comes flat. Opinions are free. Fenwick leans forward. My office is not. Bumpy looks at him. That is the first honest sentence either man has spoken since entering the room. 13:02. Fenwick leaves Bumpy alone, not arrested, not free. A legal hallway between both. Outside, Malcolm waits with an attorney. Inside, Bumpy studies the wall. Paint peeling near the radiator. A crack beneath the window. A room built for men to feel time. That is why Bumpy refuses to feel it. He counts nothing. He waits. At 13:18, a detective enters. At 13:26, another question. At 13:41, fingerprints. At 13:58, more waiting. Pressure is repetitive by design. It does not need to hurt. It only needs to make relief look valuable. At 14:07, Fenwick returns. He places another document down. Temporary detention request. Bumpy reads the first line. You're holding me. Until we sort out the firearm and financial records. How long? Fenwick's face stays neutral. As long as the law gives me. Bumpy nods. Exactly what he expected. Mostly. 14:22, Malcolm receives the news. He slams one palm against the wall outside the office. The attorney says, calm down. Malcolm turns. Don't tell me that. The attorney adjusts his glasses. They have enough to hold him temporarily, not enough to charge the fire. What about the gun? Problem. The books? Problem. How big? Depends what Fenwick can connect. Malcolm looks through the frosted glass toward the corridor where Bumpy disappeared. This was supposed to be controlled. A few weak clues. A little attention. Maybe questioning. Instead, Bumpy is being held. Businesses are being raided. Records seized. People questioned. The Italians are untouched. Malcolm suddenly hates the shape of the plan. Because from where he stands, it does not look like strategy anymore. It looks like sacrifice. And only one man seems to know what is being purchased. 15:06, Carlo Battista hears Bumpy has been detained. He dismisses everyone from the room except one lieutenant. The lieutenant says, Fenwick thinks Johnson did Harlan. Battista stares at the newspaper. No. You sure? Yes. Why? Because Johnson knows we did it. The lieutenant frowns. Then why hasn't he told anyone? Battista does not answer. That question has been sitting in the room since morning. Now it becomes heavier. The lieutenant tries another angle. Maybe he wants Fenwick looking at him. Batista finally looks up. Why would any man want that? No answer. Batista stands, walks toward the window. Across the street, traffic moves beneath gray afternoon light. He has spent 30 years reading threats. Bumpy's silence does not read like fear. It does not read like weakness. It reads like a move. The problem is, Batista cannot see the board. 1618. Bumpy is transferred to a holding cell. Metal bench. Concrete. One other man sleeping against the wall. A guard closes the door. The sound is final without being permanent. Bumpy removes his coat, folds it, sits. No anger, no pacing. Pacing is movement without progress. He looks toward the bars. Somewhere outside, Fenwick is opening files. Somewhere else, Batista is wondering why Bumpy has said nothing. Somewhere in Harlem, people are deciding whether his detention means weakness. That is the part no prosecutor understands. A boss in a cell creates questions faster than police create answers. Who moves? Who waits? Who steals? Who defects? Who celebrates too early? Bumpy rests his hands on his knees. He has given Fenwick a direction. Now he will see who uses the space left behind. The dangerous part has begun. Not the arrest, the absence. Has no clock. That is intentional. Men behave differently when time is removed from them. Some invent it, some ask guards, some count footsteps. Bumpy does none of those things. He sits on the steel bench with his coat folded beneath one hand. Across from him, the sleeping man wakes, looks at Bumpy, looks again. Recognition arrives slowly. "You Johnson?" Bumpy does not answer. The man smiles. "Thought so." Silence. "They say Fenwick finally got you." Bumpy looks toward the corridor. "People say many things." The man laughs. 3 newspapers outside already calling you a firebug. Bumpy turns his head. 3? Maybe 4. That matters more than the insult. 4 newspapers means Fenwick is feeding somebody. Pressure has moved from evidence to theater. The clock may be hidden. The schedule is not. 1749, Malcolm Avery returns to the office. Nobody sits. That tells him everything. Elias Boone places a list on the desk. Police took records from 6 locations. 6? 2 more since Bumpy went in. Malcolm reads, the Cotton Crown, the Garage, a legitimate accounting firm. The last one is the problem. They had no reason to go there. Elias shakes his head. Fenwick's people found a payment in one of the seized books. Malcolm curses. Not loudly. Loud anger wastes information. Malcolm looks toward Bumpy's empty chair. An empty chair is dangerous. People begin filling it with guesses, and guesses are rarely loyal. 1858, Carlo Batista receives a second report. Police have not visited one Italian location. Not one. That does not comfort him. It alarms him. Victor Senzone stands by the wall. Maybe Johnson gave them nothing. Batista looks at him. That is obvious. Then we're safe. Batista turns slowly. Safe? Victor realizes the mistake. Batista walks closer. Johnson knows your face. Yes. He knows Ferry. Yes. He knows Lanza. Yes. He knows Bellini. Victor says nothing. Batista continues. And yet every badge in Manhattan is kicking his doors instead of ours. Victor swallows. So either Johnson is a fool. Batista pauses. Nobody in the room believes that. Or we are standing inside something we do not understand. That sentence changes Victor's breathing. Fear becomes stronger when it has no shape. A visible gun can be avoided. An invisible reason cannot. 2002. Fenwick opens another folder. Victor Senzone. Bumpy's eyes do not move. Know him? No. Angelo Ferri? No answer. Peter Lanza? Nothing. Rocco Bellini? Bumpy looks at Fenwick. You asking or reading? Fenwick closes the folder, so Bumpy knows the names. Maybe. Or perhaps Fenwick wants him to think police know more than they do. Interrogation is two men lying about the size of their hands. Fenwick leans back. You can make this simple, Bumpy replies. Simple for who? For yourself. That's rarely the offer. Fenwick taps the table. You give me the men who burned the store, and this fire investigation leaves your doorstep. Bumpy studies him. A clean exit. Too clean. That's what makes it expensive. He says, I don't have anyone to give you. Fenwick's face hardens. 2041, Malcolm learns Fenwick offered Bumpy a deal. The attorney delivers the message. He refused. Malcolm laughs once. Not because anything is funny. You're sure? I was in the room. He could have named them. Yes. And walked? Possibly. Malcolm turns away. Elias stands near the window. Neither man speaks for several seconds. Finally, Malcolm says, This is no longer protecting Harlem. Elias does not answer. Malcolm turns. You think it is? I think Bumpy knows what he's doing. That's faith. Yes. I prefer plans. Elias looks at him. Plans are just faith written down. Malcolm does not appreciate that either. He picks up the telephone. Find Batista. Elias stiffens. For what? I want to know if the Italians even understand what he is doing for them. Bumpy said don't touch them. I'm not touching. Malcolm dials. I'm asking. Sometimes disobedience begins by changing a verb. 2118 Batista refuses the call, then changes his mind. He meets Malcolm in the back room of a restaurant closed for the night. No handshakes, no drinks. Enemies do not need ceremony when both understand the danger. Batista speaks first. You came alone. Malcolm sits. So did you. That doesn't make us friends. Nothing will. Batista almost smiles. Good. Malcolm places no papers on the table, no threats, no leverage, just one question. Why hasn't Fenwick touched you? Batista studies him. You tell me. Malcolm's jaw tightens. You burned the wrong store. Yes. You almost killed the wrong man. Yes. You know Bumpy knows. Yes. And... Batista leans forward. And I have spent the entire day asking why your boss is sitting in a cell instead of pointing at me. For the first time, Malcolm hears his own fear spoken by an enemy. 2154. Neither man gets an answer. That matters. Malcolm expected Italians to have a plan. Batista expected Bumpy to have one. Instead, both sides are staring at the same silence from opposite ends. Batista lights a cigarette. You think Johnson is protecting us? Malcolm says nothing. That would be stupid. Still nothing. Batista exhales, which means he is not. Malcolm looks at him. Then what is he doing? Batista smiles without warmth. If I knew I would sleep tonight. Malcolm stands. Batista stops him. One thing. Malcolm waits. If Fenwick keeps tearing through Harlem because of us, my people will start thinking Johnson is using this to weaken us. And if your people move? Batista looks at the ashtray. Then we make the mistake twice. That is the first useful sentence of the meeting. Malcolm leaves, not reassured, but informed. The Italians are afraid too. Balance exists when both sides fear losing it. 2348 Batista gathers Victor, Angelo, Peter, and Rocco. 4 men. One mistake. He places a map of Harlem on the table. You do nothing. Victor nods. Batista points at him. I mean nothing. No retaliation. For what? Victor hesitates. Johnson's people. Batista's expression changes. Johnson's people have not touched us. Yet. Batista slaps him, not hard enough to injure, hard enough to edit his thinking. Stop saying yet. Victor lowers his eyes. Batista looks at all four. If anybody shoots, threatens, follows, scares, or breathes wrong near Johnson's people, I will handle him myself. Angelo asks, why? Batista answers, because somebody is trying to make this city move. Who? Batista looks toward the map. I don't know. And again, the most dangerous words in organized crime enter the room. 114. In a downtown office, someone makes a telephone call. The voice is the same one Batista heard before. Calm, male, unhurried. The pressure is working, a second voice answers. What about Johnson? He took it. Voluntarily. A pause. Yes. The second voice is silent. That answer was not expected. He knows. Not everything. And Batista? Confused. Good. The first man looks through a window at a nearly empty street. Fenwick is widening the raids. Let him. How far? As far as he wants. The first voice hesitates. That could become messy. The reply comes without emotion. That's the point. The line disconnects. No names. No explanation. Only direction. Somewhere between Bumpy and Batista, somebody has been waiting for both sides to mistake pressure for each other, and the city is beginning to cooperate. 202. Bumpy wakes to footsteps. 3 guards. 1 detective. Johnson. He sits up. What? More questions. Bumpy checks the corridor clock as he passes. 2:03. Fenwick is not in the room. A younger prosecutor is. Daniel Hurst, 34. Ambitious enough to mistake exhaustion for advantage. He places photographs of seized ledgers on the table. You recognize these? Yes. Yours? No. Your garage? Not mine. Used by your people? People use streets too. Hurst smiles. You think this is funny? No. Then help yourself. Bumpy looks at the photographs. Hurst leans closer. You're protecting someone. Bumpy raises his eyes. Everyone says that when they don't understand silence. Hurst's smile disappears. Silence isn't innocence, Bumpy replies. Neither is noise. The interview ends badly for Hurst, which means it ends well for Bumpy. 3:16 Hurst reports to Fenwick. He knows who did it. Fenwick rubs his eyes. You know that? I can see it. Fenwick looks up. Your eyesight isn't admissible. Hurst sits. He's protecting the Italians. Fenwick's expression changes slightly. Why? I don't know. Then maybe he isn't. Hurst shakes his head. Come on. Fenwick looks at the board. Photographs, addresses, names, financial arrows. The investigation is expanding in every direction except the men who actually burned the store. That should bother him. Instead, anger keeps making expansion feel productive. Fenwick notices the contradiction. For the first time. Find me the source of the first Johnson tip. Hurst frowns. The clerk? No. Fenwick taps the Harlan ownership file. Who told the Italians that store was his? Hurst stares. Fenwick's voice lowers. If Johnson didn't send them, somebody sent them toward him. The case tilts, only slightly, but enough. 4:07. Bumpy returns to the cell. He does not sleep. Now he is listening. A janitor rolls a bucket. A guard coughs twice. A telephone rings far down the corridor. City buildings never truly sleep. They change shifts. That is different. At 4:21, a guard brings coffee. Bumpy takes it. Big morning for you. Bumpy looks at him. Judge at 9. The guard shrugs. Fenwick wants another day. Bumpy drinks another day. That fits, mostly. He expected pressure, expected raids, expected detention. He did not expect the garage gun. He did not expect the accounting office. He did not expect the speed. A plan is not ruined because reality changes. It is ruined when the man refuses to change with it. Bumpy places the empty cup down. He needs one message outside. No names, 2 words. Hold position. 5:43 Victor Senzone disappears, not permanently, for 47 minutes. That is enough. Batista learns Victor left his apartment, drove north, and met someone near the river. Nobody knows who. When Victor returns, Batista has him brought in. Where? Victor says nothing. Batista repeats. Where? Nowhere. Batista punches him once, this time harder. Victor hits the wall. Where? Victor spits blood. I wanted to find a meal. Did you? No. Who did you meet? Nobody. Batista stares. The lie is poor. Poor lies insult more than good ones. Batista steps closer. You think Johnson is going to sell us? Victor shakes his head. I think if he doesn't, someone else will. Batista freezes. What does that mean? Victor realizes he said too much. Fear loosens mouths. That is why powerful men keep others afraid, and why sometimes they regret doing it. 6:18. Victor finally explains. The previous night, a stranger called him, offered safety, information, a way out if Fenwick eventually turned toward the Italians. What did he want? Batista asks. Nothing yet. Name? No. Meeting? Victor nods. Near the river. Batista's face tightens. What did he say? Victor looks down. That Johnson is buying time. For what? He didn't say. Batista grabs Victor's coat. Exact words. Victor swallows. He said, Johnson thinks he can keep the balance. Balance is what we're about to break. Batista lets go. The room becomes colder. This is no longer a bad robbery, no longer a wrong address. Someone is using the mistake. Someone expected the aftermath. And someone knows how Bumpy thinks. Batista looks toward the telephone. For the first time, he considers calling Johnson directly, then remembers where Johnson is. The cell itself now feels like part of the trap. 7:06. Samuel Fenwick receives a preliminary report on the false ownership rumor. The Italians heard Harlan belonged to Bumpy through a man calling himself Emil Darrow. No verified address, no tax record matching the description, no known criminal file. A bartender remembers him, tall, dark hair, scar near one ear, paid cash, talked little. Fenwick reads the summary twice. Who is he? Hirsch shrugs. Maybe Johnson's man. Fenwick looks at him. Why would Johnson send Italians to burn a store he doesn't own? To create... Hirsch stops. The idea collapses before completion. Fenwick leans back. Find a meal. What about Johnson? We keep him. On the fire? On the gun and records. Fenwick looks toward the window. The case is split. One branch points toward Bumpy. The other points toward whoever started the lie. Fenwick does not yet realize those branches may have been designed to grow apart. 8:28. The judge reviews Bumpy's detention. Small courtroom, few spectators. Fenwick is present. So is Bumpy's attorney. Bumpy stands between them. The prosecutor argues the revolver requires further examination. Financial records require review. Connections to the fire remain unresolved. The defense calls everything speculative. The judge agrees, then disagrees. Law often survives by doing both. 24 additional hours. The gavel falls. Malcolm closes his eyes. Another day. Bumpy looks at the clock. 8:31. No visible reaction. Outside, reporters wait. Inside, Fenwick approaches. You could end this, Bumpy replies. So could you. Fenwick stops. You know who burned the store. Bumpy puts on his hat. You know I didn't. Fenwick's face tightens. That isn't the same thing. No. Bumpy walks away. That's why we're both still here. The deputies take him downstairs. The reporters never hear the exchange, but Fenwick remembers it. 10:47. Fenwick visits Nathaniel again. The clerk is stronger. Fenwick shows photographs: Victor, Angelo, Peter, Rocco. Nathaniel looks at Victor. His breathing changes. That one. You're sure? Nathaniel nods. Was he there? Yes. Fenwick covers the photograph. Now the case has a body, not Bumpy's, Italian. Fenwick leaves the hospital quickly. If Nathaniel identifies Victor, the entire investigation shifts. His son's store, his anger, his public statements. He should feel relief. Instead, he feels used. Someone aimed him. He does not yet know who. 11:21. Fenwick does not arrest Victor immediately. That surprises Hearst. We have identification. One injured witness. Enough to pick him up. Maybe. Fenwick walks to the evidence board. Bumpy connected objects on one side, Italian names on the other. Between them, Emile Darrow, unknown. Fenwick points. If we grab Sanzone, Batista buries everyone. So I want the man who started the rumor first. Hearst frowns. You think he matters more than the arsonist? Fenwick turns. I think he chose the arsonist. That is different. A man who commits violence is dangerous. A man who arranges other people's violence is architecture. Fenwick orders surveillance on Victor. Quiet. No warrant served. No press. For the first time since the fire, the prosecutor chooses silence. Bumpy would have appreciated the move. If he knew about it, he does not. Not yet. 12:46. Bumpy asks for paper. Writes 3 words. Find Emile Darrow. The attorney takes the note. No explanation? No. You want Malcolm on it? Yes. Anything else? Bumpy pauses, then adds, do not contact Batista. The attorney reads it. You think Malcolm already did? Bumpy looks at him. That answer's enough. The attorney folds the note. Before leaving, he asks, why are you still protecting them? Bumpy's face changes slightly. Not enough to explain. Enough to show the question matters. I'm protecting something. What? Bumpy looks toward the door. Not from this room. The attorney leaves. Bumpy sits alone again. The story has shifted. At first, the Italians made a mistake. Now someone appears to have arranged the mistake. That means the fire was not only a fire, it was an invitation. And everyone accepted. 13:22. Malcolm receives the note. Find Emile Darrow. He reads the second line. Do not contact Batista. Elias watches him. He knows. Probably. You told him? No. Then he guessed. Malcolm folds the paper. Fine. Elias asks, you going to follow the order this time? Malcolm looks at him. Yes. No hesitation. That matters. Bumpy's authority is not gone. It is strained. Different thing. They begin with the Meridian bartender, Leon Pescara, 31, Italian, works nights, lives in Queens, no record beyond 2 disorderly conduct charges. Malcolm sends Elias, not police pressure, street pressure, different temperature. The bartender is found before 1400. He denies everything, then remembers Emile after Elias mentions Victor. Memory often needs a price. Sometimes that price is fear. Sometimes it is knowing the wrong man already knows your name. 1404. Leon Pescara gives them more than expected. Emile came in 3 times, never drank alcohol, coffee only, paid with new bills, asked questions about Victor's crew, knew which captains disliked Bumpy, knew which businesses were rumored to belong to him. Then one night he mentioned Harlan. Casually, too casually. He said Johnson bought it through a lawyer. What lawyer? Leon shakes his head. Didn't say. Description? Leon repeats the police version. tall, dark hair, scar near ear, then add something police do not have. He wore a ring. What kind? College ring. School? Leon closes his eyes. Blue stone letters around it. Which letters? I couldn't read. Elias leans closer. Try. Leon whispers. Maybe CU. Columbia University. The same school Charles Fenwick attended. Coincidence is a lazy explanation. Elias does not like lazy explanations. 1511. Victor Sanzone notices surveillance. 2 men, 1 blue sedan, same corner twice. Police. He panics. Batista's order was clear. Stay put. Do nothing. Victor does both for 6 minutes, then leaves through the rear. Fear hates stillness. He takes a cab downtown, changes cars, walks 3 blocks, enters a hotel lobby. One of Fenwick's detectives follows. Victor sees him in a mirror. Runs. The detective shouts. People turn. Victor crashes through a side door, into an alley. A delivery truck blocks one end. He goes the other way. The detective follows. Victor reaches for his waistband. Bad instinct. The detective sees the movement. Draws. Hands. Victor freezes. No gun comes out, just a wallet. For 2 seconds, Death waits for clarification. Then Victor runs again. The detective tackles him against a parked car. Noise replaces uncertainty. 1537, Victor is arrested. Not for the fire, for fleeing. Then Nathaniel's identification is added. Then robbery. Then arson. Then aggravated assault. Charges stack quickly once the first handcuff closes. Batista receives the news. His face becomes stone. The lieutenant asks, "Do we move him?" "No." "Lawyer?" "Yes." "Anything else?" Batista looks at the wall. "Find out what he said." Victor says nothing, for now. But Batista knows cells. Fear changes shape in cells. Men begin imagining years, then decades. Then funerals they will never attend. Victor's not strong enough for decades. Batista knows it. So does Fenwick. And somewhere in another building, Bumpy Johnson is sitting in a cell for a crime Victor committed. That fact now feels less like protection, more like leverage. Batista begins to understand the size of Bumpy's silence, not the reason, the size. 1652. Bumpy hears Victor has been arrested. The attorney brings the news. So Fenwick has his man. 1. Good. You sound relieved. I am. Then why not talk now? Bumpy looks at him. Because Victor is not the whole thing. You know that? I know a man named Emile Darrow doesn't accidentally appear before a fire like this. The attorney sits. Your people found something? Bumpy does not answer. Attorney privilege has limits. Street privilege has different ones. The attorney sighs. They can probably hold you another day. Bumpy nods. Maybe 2. Not 3. We'll see. You plan to be in here this long? Bumpy looks toward the wall. No. That is the first admission. Small, but real. The attorney studies him. So this got away from you? Bumpy answers. No. A beat. It got larger. There is a difference. Whether the difference saves him remains unknown. 1726. Malcolm and Elias trace Columbia rings. Thousands. Too many. They narrow by year. Charles Fenwick graduated 3 years earlier. They obtain a yearbook through a bookseller. Pages turn. Young men in suits smiling. Future lawyers, bankers, politicians. One face stops Elias. Tall, dark hair, scar near one ear. Name, Graham Lyle. Economics, not law. A fraternity officer, no criminal record. Current employment, municipal bond analyst. Malcolm stares. Doesn't fit. That's what bothers me. Maybe Leon was wrong. Maybe. Elias points at the photograph. Scar, ring, height. Enough. They search further. Graham Lyle had one summer internship. Where? Office of the Special Prosecutor, Samuel Fenwick. Malcolm closes the yearbook. Now the clue is no longer neat. It is dangerous. Someone connected to Fenwick may have started the rumor that led Italians to Fenwick's son's store. That makes no sense, which makes it worth fearing. 1801. They do not tell Fenwick. Not yet. They send a man to watch Graham Lyle. He leaves work at 1809, walks alone, buys a newspaper, takes the subway uptown, gets off before Harlem, enters an apartment building on West 96th. Nothing unusual. At 1844, another man enters, older, gray hat, long dark coat. The watcher recognizes the description Theodore Graves gave. The man who watched him place evidence behind Harlan. Two separate lines meet. That is never comfortable. The watcher telephones Elias. Elias telephones Malcolm. Malcolm does not speak for several seconds. Someone connected to the false tip is connected to the man who watched Bumpy's people plant clues. Which means somebody knows both sides of the lie, the original one, and Bumpy's. Malcolm looks toward the clock. For the first time, he understands something important. Bumpy's planted evidence may itself have been expected. 1837. Malcolm gets a message to Bumpy through the attorney, Graham Lyle Columbia, former Fenwick intern, connected to Watcher. Bumpy reads it twice. His face remains still. Inside, the plan changes again. Someone expected Italians to hit the store. Someone watched Bumpy respond. Someone may have expected him to protect the balance. That last possibility bothers him most. Predicting a man's violence is easy. Predicting his restraint requires knowing him. Bumpy folds the note. The attorney asks, "What?" Bumpy replies, "They knew what I would do." "Who?" "I don't know." "That scare you?" Bumpy looks at him. "No." The attorney waits. Bumpy continues, "It interests me." That is not entirely true. Interest is what powerful men call fear when they refuse to give it ownership. He hands the note back. "Tell Malcolm, no move." "No move?" "None." The trap has finally become visible. That is when stepping becomes most dangerous. 1958, Graham Lyle leaves the apartment. The gray hat man stays. Elias's watcher follows Graham. 2 blocks, 3. Graham enters a diner, sits alone, orders coffee. At 20:09, Daniel Hurst enters, Fenwick's younger prosecutor. He sits across from Graham. The watcher nearly misses the significance, then recognizes Hurst from newspapers. They talk for 12 minutes, no papers exchanged, no obvious tension. Hurst leaves first. Graham stays. Elias receives the report. Malcolm's expression hardens. "So Fenwick's office is involved?" "Maybe." "Stop saying maybe." Elias looks at him. "We have one meeting. After a false tip, after a watcher, after Victor, after Bumpy gets held." Elias agrees it looks bad. Too bad. Malcolm reaches for his coat. "Now we tell Bumpy." "No." Malcolm turns. "Why?" "Because his order was no move." "Information isn't a move." Elias replies, "It becomes one when we decide what it means." 21:18. Bumpy is moved to another cell, alone this time. Fenwick requested separation. Why? Nobody tells him. Bumpy sits, listens. One guard outside. No prisoner nearby. Isolation is supposed to remove information. Instead, it makes patterns louder. At 21:31, footsteps stop outside. Not guard shoes, leather soles. Fenwick appears. No folder, no coffee. He stands at the bars. "You know Sanzone is ours." Bumpy nods. "He'll talk." "Maybe." Fenwick almost smiles at the word. "Your attorney tells you too much." "My attorney tells me enough." Fenwick grips the bar lightly. "I think someone aimed those Italians at the store." Bumpy looks at him. For the first time, both men are standing beside the same idea. Fenwick continues. And I think you realized it before I did. Bumpy says nothing. Fenwick asks, "Now, why didn't you tell me?" Bumpy answers, "You weren't ready to hear it." 2154, Fenwick's expression tightens. "You put evidence on yourself." Bumpy's eyes remain still. Not confirmation, not denial. Fenwick studies him. "I've seen bad criminals." Silence. "I've seen clever criminals." Still silence. "I've never seen one volunteer for my attention." Bumpy replies, "Maybe you haven't." Fenwick steps closer. "What are you buying?" There it is. The right question. Bumpy looks at him. "Time." "For who?" No answer. "The Italians?" No answer. "Yourself?" Nothing. "Harlem?" Bumpy's gaze shifts almost imperceptibly. Fenwick sees it. Maybe. Or wants to. He exhales. "You think if I hit Batusta first, the city explodes." Bumpy finally speaks. "You said it." Fenwick waits for more. None comes. The prosecutor begins to understand one layer. Not the whole structure, just enough to become dangerous. Understanding always comes late. That is why it costs more when it arrives. 2349, Victor finally asks for Fenwick. Batista feared this moment. Fenwick expected it. Victor's lawyer advises against speaking. Victor speaks anyway. Not confession, negotiation. "I give you the man who gave us the store." Fenwick sits. "Emile?" Victor nods. "You know where he is?" "No." "Then what are you giving me?" Victor swallows. A voice. Fenwick leans forward. Victor explains the river meeting, the anonymous call, the warning about Bumpy, the phrase about balance. Fenwick listens. "Can you identify the voice?" "Maybe." "Who do you think it was?" Victor hesitates, then says, "Somebody educated." Fenwick waits. Not street, more waiting. "Government, maybe." Fenwick's face changes. Victor sees it. Now fear transfers. That is what information does best. Fenwick asks, "Did he mention me?" Victor nods slowly. "He said you would do exactly what you did." The room goes still. For the first time, Samuel Fenwick feels like a piece on someone else's board. 106. Bumpy sleeps for 40 minutes, dreamless, wakes before the guard arrives. The door opens. "Johnson." He stands. Fenwick again. This time the prosecutor looks different, not tired, focused. They sit. Fenwick places no evidence on the table. "Victor talked." Bumpy waits. "He says somebody predicted my response." Silence. "Predicted yours too." Bumpy's eyes narrow slightly. Fenwick sees it. "I have a problem inside my office." Bumpy says, "You have several." Fenwick ignores the jab. "I need to know what you know." Bumpy answers, "No." Fenwick leans back. "You want out of this cell?" "Yes." "Then help me." "No." Fenwick's patience cracks. "Why?" Bumpy looks at him. "Because if I tell you before I know who you can trust, I'm not helping you." A pause. "I'm helping him." Fenwick says nothing. For the first time, Bumpy is not the only man afraid of information. 231 Malcolm cannot sleep. He walks through the office, stops at Bumpy's desk, sees the Harlan folder, opens it. Charles Fenwick, Nathaniel Vale, ownership papers, photographs. He turns a page. One document catches his attention. Insurance policy, beneficiary structure, nothing illegal, but unusual. Harlan Fine Goods is owned by Charles. The building itself is owned by a holding company. Malcolm traces the company, another company, then a bank trustee. He calls Elias. "Come back." 20 minutes later, they follow the paper chain. Eventually, they reach one name. Graham Lyle, not owner, consultant. He helped arrange the property financing 11 months earlier, before Charles bought the store. Malcolm leans back. So Graham knew exactly who owned Harlan. Exactly. which means the false rumor was not a mistake. It was chosen. The fire was aimed, not at Bumpy, not only at the Italians, at Fenwick. A 4:11. Graham Lyle receives a telephone call. Hurst. They're looking. Graham stands in darkness. How close? I don't know. You were followed? No. You sure? Hurst says nothing. That answer is enough. Graham walks to the window. We end it. Now? Yes. What about Johnson? He's still inside. Fenwick? Suspicious. Graham's voice cools. Then we accelerate. How? A pause. We make the Italians think Johnson talked. Hurst inhales. That could start shooting. That is why. Hurst looks toward his apartment door. This wasn't the plan. Graham replies. Plans change when people refuse their roles. The line disconnects. Hurst remains still. He has crossed many small lines. Now a large one appears. Men often discover morality only after consequences become visible. Before that, they call everything strategy. 5:02. A typed message appears beneath the door of an Italian social club. No signature. 3 lines. Sanzone talked. Johnson confirmed names. Fenwick moves at noon. The bartender finds it. Calls Batista. Batista reads. Does not believe it. Then reads again. Fear does not require belief. Only possibility. He calls Victor's lawyer. No answer. Calls another contact. Learns Victor met Fenwick. True. Learns Bumpy also met Fenwick privately. True. 2 true facts. 1 false conclusion. That is enough to start a war. Batista orders his men to stand down. Then receives another call. One of his warehouses is being watched by unknown cars, not police, or maybe police. Nobody knows. A captain asks, do we move weapons? Batista says no. Do we hit Johnson first? Batista turns cold. No. The captain hesitates. Then what if he already sold us? Batista answers. Then we find out before we become stupid twice. 5:41, Bumpy hears commotion in the corridor. A guard moves fast. Telephone ringing, doors opening. Something outside has changed. At 5:49, Fenwick appears, no tie, coat over his arm. Someone told Batista you gave us names. Bumpy stands immediately. First fast movement in 2 days. Who? Don't know. Does Batista believe it? Don't know. Bumpy's jaw tightens. Fenwick watches. You care. Bumpy looks at him. Of course. Why? Bumpy steps closer to the bars. Because if he believes it, men start proving loyalty with guns. Fenwick says, my people can contain it. Bumpy almost laughs. No. Fenwick's face hardens. Bumpy continues. Your people can arrive after. A pause. That's different. Fenwick knows he is right. Violence moves faster than warrants. Always has. Now the balance is slipping. Exactly where Bumpy feared. 6:13. Fenwick makes a decision. Temporary release. No. Too visible. Transfer. Worse. He allows Bumpy a monitored telephone call. 1 call. Bumpy dials Malcolm. Malcolm answers on the first ring. Listen. No greeting. Batista got a message saying I talked. We heard nothing. You will. What do you want? Nothing. Malcolm closes his eyes. Again. Nothing. No meetings. No guns. No cars near their places. What if they move? They won't. You sure? No. Malcolm grips the receiver. That's reassuring. Bumpy ignores it. Tell everyone if Italians come, nobody fires unless they fire first. Malcolm understands the risk. That makes us look weak. Bumpy's answer comes clean. Only to stupid people. Then. And Malcolm? Yes? Find who wants the first shot. The line ends. The entire chapter has been moving toward that sentence. The first shot. Because once it happens, nobody owns what follows. 6:52 Batista makes his own call. To a number he has not used in years. Bumpy's office. Malcolm answers. Silence. Then Batista. You know who this is? Yes. Did Johnson give Fenwick names? No. You'd say that anyway. Yes. Batista almost respects the answer. What did Johnson say? Stand down. A pause. To us? To everyone. Batista looks at his men, weapons on tables, coats on, fear dressed for work. Malcolm asks, What did your message say? Batista reads it. Malcolm writes every word, then says, Ours didn't come from us. Batista replies, Mine didn't come from Italians. 2 enemies. Same conclusion. Somebody wants movement. Batista slowly raises one hand. His men stop preparing, not because trust exists, because suspicion has moved elsewhere. For 1 more hour, the balance holds. 1 hour can be a kingdom. 8:58, Bumpy is brought before the judge again. Fenwick asks for 1 final day. The defense objects hard. The judge looks irritated. 24 hours. The gavel falls. After that, charge him or release him. Bumpy looks at Fenwick. Fenwick looks back. 3 days. That is the limit now. The attorney whispers, You'll be out tomorrow. Bumpy says nothing. Outside, reporters shout, Mr. Johnson, did you order the Harlem fire? Are you protecting Italian mobsters? Bumpy walks without answering. Flashbulbs pop. 1 photograph captures him mid-step. Calm, hat low, hands cuffed. By noon, that image will be across New York. A man publicly taking blame for something he did not do. No one yet knows why. That is exactly how Bumpy wants it. For 1 more day. 9:44. Malcolm sees the photograph before Bumpy does. He folds the newspaper. Elias says, Tomorrow. Maybe. Judge said so. Fenwick can find something. Maybe. Malcolm hates that word now too. He looks at the map of raids, at Graham Lyle's photograph, at Daniel Hurst's name, at the Harlan ownership chain, at Batista's anonymous message. Everything is connected. Not enough to prove, enough to understand the direction. Someone wanted Italians to burn Fenwick's son's store, wanted Fenwick angry, wanted Bumpy blamed, wanted raids, wanted Italians suspicious, wanted Bumpy and Batista to fire first. Why? That is still missing. Motive is the spine. Without it, facts are only bones on a table. Malcolm says, find Graham's money. Elias nods. Money explains men when ideology becomes too theatrical. They begin tracing. 10:29, Batista receives word that Victor may cooperate. Not confirmed. Potential. He sits alone. The obvious move is to eliminate Victor. Impossible in custody. The second is to silence anyone Victor could name. Risky. The third is to run. Insulting. Batista chooses none. He sends a message to every captain. No violence for 24 hours. 1 captain objects. Johnson could use the time. Batista replies, he already had 3 days. That silences the room. Everyone understands what he means. Bumpy had names, opportunity, a prosecutor angry enough to listen, and still said nothing. The fact begins spreading through the Italian side. Not gratitude, not yet. Something more uncomfortable. Respect beginning before permission. Batista hates owing enemies. Debts rearrange posture. Still, he cannot deny the arithmetic. If Bumpy wanted them destroyed, they'd already be bleeding. Instead, he is the one in a cell. That fact is becoming impossible to ignore. 11:13. Elias finds Graham's money. Not much. That is what makes it interesting. 3 deposits over 6 months, each just under $10,000, different banks, cash, no clear source, not enough for a mastermind, enough for a participant. Then 1 larger payment, property consulting fee, from a shell company. Malcolm traces the shell. The owner is hidden behind attorneys. He traces 1 attorney, then another. Finally, a corporate registration. Name: Atlas Civic Development. Malcolm knows it. Everyone in Harlem real estate knows it. A redevelopment consortium buying blocks around future city projects. They have tried for years to acquire property controlled indirectly by both Bumpy and Italian interests. Both sides refused because control of streets is not always about crime. Sometimes it is about deeds. Malcolm leans back. Now the motive begins breathing. If Harlem becomes unstable, property becomes cheaper. Pressure becomes profit. 12:36. Malcolm gets the Atlas information to Bumpy. The attorney carries it. Bumpy reads slowly. Atlas Civic Development, property acquisitions, Graham payments. He looks up. Better. The attorney blinks. Better? Now it makes sense? You knew? No. You suspected? I suspected somebody wanted the neighborhood unstable. The attorney leans forward. And you put yourself in jail based on that? Bumpy folds the paper. I put myself where Fenwick would look first. That sounds worse. Bumpy almost smiles. He looked at me instead of opening every Italian door in one afternoon. He still raided Harlem. Yes. Business is panicked. Yes. So your plan failed. Bumpy looks at him. No. A beat. It bent. The attorney shakes his head. You really believe there's a difference? Bumpy replies, there's always a difference between bending and breaking. Tomorrow will decide which one happened. 1317. Fenwick quietly investigates Atlas. He reaches it from another direction. Graham's finances, Hearst's family, property acquisitions. He sits alone with the same name Bumpy now knows, Atlas Civic Development. For the first time, Fenwick sees how personal anger made him useful. His son's store was not collateral, it was bait. That realization hurts more than manipulation should, because a prosecutor is supposed to recognize bait. He calls Hearst into the office, closes the door. Hearst sits. Fenwick places one file on the desk. Atlas. Hearst's face barely moves. Barely is enough. Fenwick asks, You know them? By reputation. Your brother-in-law? Hearst freezes. Fenwick watches. No more questions needed. Not yet. He stands. Go home. Hearst looks confused. What? You're suspended. On what basis? Fenwick opens the door. On the basis that I no longer trust the room when you're in it. Hearst leaves pale. The trap has started closing. 1402. Graham learns Hearst is suspended. He does not panic. Panic wastes exits. He packs one suitcase, burns 2 notebooks, removes a small revolver from a drawer, then telephones someone. Move tonight, the voice asks. What about Atlas? Too exposed. And Hearst? Finished. What about Johnson? Graham pauses. He comes out tomorrow. Problem? Yes. Then solve it. Graham looks in the revolver. No. The voice becomes colder. You knew what this required. I know what pressure requires. Pressure failed. Graham closes the suitcase. So did your prediction. Silence, then. You're forgetting who paid you. Graham answers, no. He hangs up. For the first time, the man who arranged the first lie appears uncertain. Systems feel powerful until the person inside realizes he is disposable too. Graham leaves the apartment. The gray hat man is waiting downstairs, not to protect him, to escort him. 1449. Elias's watcher sees Graham leave with the gray hat man. Calls Malcolm. Car headed south. Follow. Already. The sedan moves through traffic. No hurry. That bothers Malcolm. Men escaping usually hurry. Men being taken somewhere do not. The watcher follows to an industrial district. Car enters a fenced warehouse property. Sign. Atlas Storage Services. Not subtle anymore. Malcolm calls Fenwick through the attorney. First direct information exchange between their sides. Fenwick listens, says, "Stay out." Malcolm replies, "That depends." On what? Whether your people can arrive before mine get impatient. Fenwick does not like the tone, but he understands it. He dispatches detectives he trusts. Not Hearst Circle, not local precinct men, clean team, or as clean as he can manage. Trust has become expensive. At 1503, cars begin converging on the warehouse. So do Bumpy's people. Different roads, same destination. 1518. Bumpy knows none of this in real time. That is the cruelty of confinement. Decisions happen without you. He sits on the bench, waits. A guard passes. Nothing. Another. Nothing. At 1531, distant telephone. At 1538, hurried footsteps. At 1544, Fenwick arrives. Breathing slightly harder than usual, Bumpy stands. "We found Graham. Alive. For now." "Where?" "Atlas Warehouse." Bumpy's eyes narrow. "My people?" "Nearby. Tell them to stay out." Fenwick almost laughs. "You tell them." He opens the cell. Not release. Telephone access. Bumpy calls Malcolm. "Police handle it." Malcolm says, "They may kill Graham." "Police handle it." "Why?" Bumpy's answer is simple. "Because if we take him, it becomes street business. And if Fenwick takes him, it becomes evidence. Paper is colder than steel. Today, Bumpy needs cold." 1601. At the Atlas Warehouse, police enter through the front. Graham hears the first shout. The gray hat man draws. Not Graham, the gray hat man. That answers one question. He was never merely a watcher. Gunfire cracks through metal space. One detective dives behind crates. Another returns fire. Graham drops behind a forklift. The gray hat man moves toward a side exit. Outside, Elias's people hear shots. One man reaches for his pistol. Elias stops him. Bumpy said no. Another shot. A detective screams. The temptation to enter becomes physical. Elias keeps them back. Inside, Graham crawls, finds a dropped briefcase, not his, opens it, cash, documents, property maps, names, Atlas acquisitions. He stares. The whole operation. More than he knew. The gray hat man shouts, "Leave it!" Graham understands. He was never partner, only a tool. Tools are discarded when fingerprints become inconvenient. 1607, Graham runs toward the loading bay carrying the briefcase. The gray hat man fires. Bullet hits metal. Sparks. Police return fire. The gray hat man disappears behind shelving. Graham reaches the loading door. Locked. He turns, sees Elias outside through wired glass. For 1 second, two men look at each other. Graham pounds the door. "Open it!" Elias does not move. Police business. Bumpy's order. Inside, another shot. Glass breaks. Graham ducks. A detective reaches him, pulls him behind cover. Hands. Graham drops the briefcase, raises both. "I'll talk." The detective cuffs him. Across the warehouse, the gray hat man reaches a rear stair. Fenwick's team follows. He disappears onto the roof. No body, no arrest. One architect captured, one shadow still moving. The story is not ready to close. Neither is the trap. 1719, Graham talks. Not everything. Enough. Atlas wanted pressure on Harlem property, create instability, trigger investigations, damage both Bumpy and Italian interests, force owners to sell. Graham arranged the false rumor. Hearst helped steer early investigative attention. The gray hat man supervised. Name? Graham does not know. Calls him Mercer. Probably fake. Who controls Atlas? Graham hesitates. Lawyer asks for deal. Fenwick refuses. Graham stops talking. The conspiracy remains incomplete. But the original fire is clear. Victor and his crew committed it. They believed Harlan belonged to Bumpy because Graham told them. Bumpy had no role. Fenwick stares through the glass. He now has enough to publicly clear Bumpy from the arson. Not enough to explain why Bumpy planted weak clues against himself. That part is not in Graham's story. That part belongs only to Bumpy. And perhaps Batista is beginning to understand it too. Tomorrow, Bumpy walks. Then other debts come due. 1803, Batista hears Graham was arrested. Then hears Atlas is involved. Then hears Hearst is suspended. Pieces arrive out of order. Still, the picture forms. He sits with two captains. Johnson knew someone wanted pressure. How? Batista shakes his head. Doesn't matter. Then why take blame? Batista looks at them. To slow Fenwick. One captain laughs. That's insane. Batista does not. If Fenwick had hit us first, what would we have done? Silence. The answer is obvious. Lawyers. Destroyed records, threats, maybe bodies. Then Bumpy's people would have armed. Then police would have flooded Harlem. Then Atlas buys property from frightened owners. The captain stops smiling. Batista leans back. Johnson put himself between the prosecutor and us. Nobody likes the sentence, especially Batista, because it creates a debt between enemies, and debt is a form of ownership. Batista refuses to be owned, but he cannot deny what happened. 1841. Malcolm receives word from the attorney. Tomorrow morning. Certain? Fenwick is dropping the fire theory. The gun? Possession issue is weak. They may pursue later, but not enough to continue holding him. Malcolm sits. 3 days, almost exactly. Elias stands nearby. You doubted him. Malcolm looks at him. So did you. Less. That doesn't count. Elias almost smiles. Malcolm opens the Harlan folder, closes it. What do we do about Atlas? Nothing tonight? What about Italians? Nothing. Malcolm laughs quietly. We've done a lot of nothing. Elias replies. Sometimes nothing is the expensive move. Malcolm nods. Then, you think Bumpy knew all this? No. Then what did he know? Elias looks toward the empty chair. Enough. That word finally feels different. Not complete. Enough. The distance between those two things is where experienced men survive. 1926. Fenwick visits Bumpy one final time. No folder, no coffee, no performance. Graham talked. Bumpy waits. Atlas, a nod. Hearst, another. The fire was aimed at my office. Bumpy says, at your anger. Fenwick looks at him. Yes, a pause. You knew? No. You suspected? I suspected someone wanted movement. Fenwick studies him. You made yourself the target. For a little while. You could have gone to prison. Could have. Fenwick's jaw tightens. You say that too easily. Bumpy looks toward the corridor clock. Easy words aren't easy choices. Fenwick waits, then asks, Why protect Batista? Bumpy's eyes return to him. I didn't. Fenwick almost laughs. You sat in a cell while I chased your people. Bumpy answers, I protected what happens when Batista and I don't start shooting. Fenwick understands. Not fully. Enough. Tomorrow the cell opens. The rest will happen outside law. 2008 news reaches Italian circles before midnight. Bumpy is being released in the morning. No fire charge. Victor remains in custody. Atlas investigation expands. Batista makes one decision. Cars, a captain asks. For what? Johnson. Everyone looks up. You going to meet him? No. Batista puts on his coat. We are. Where? Batista pauses. Not a restaurant, not a street, not a back room. Some debts deserve witnesses. The syndicate room. The captain's face changes. That room is not used for enemies. Not officially. Batista says he comes out, we pick him up. Does he agree? Batista looks at him. He will. And if he thinks it's a setup? He should. A small smile. Respect without danger is just applause. Cars are ordered, men are called, no weapons shown, no threats planned. But Bumpy will not know that, not when the doors open, and neither will the listener. 2103 Bumpy lies down for his final night in custody. He knows release is likely. He does not know Batista's plan. He does not know cars are being arranged. He does not know the syndicate room is being prepared. He knows only what 3 days have cost. Raids, fear, a near war, a wounded detective, an exposed conspiracy, a prosecutor forced to look inward, and an Italian organization still standing. Not untouched, standing. That distinction is the entire story. Bumpy closes his eyes. The cell is quiet. Silence here is different now. Before, it was pressure. Now it is an ending pretending to be one. But endings are suspicious things, especially when enemies begin preparing rooms. Tomorrow, Bumpy walks outside, and before he reaches his own car, another one will be waiting. The question will not be whether he gets in. The question will be where they take him. 7:18. Morning enters the holding floor through wired glass. Gray first, then pale gold. Bumpy is already awake. His coat is folded beside him, hat on the bench. Nothing packed because nothing was unpacked. A guard appears carrying papers. Johnson. Bumpy stands. You're going home. No smile. Release is not victory. It only means the other side failed to purchase enough time. Bumpy puts on his coat. The guard unlocks the cell. 3 days. Not long enough to change a man. Long enough to show everyone what happens when he is absent. Bumpy walks into the corridor. At the far end, Samuel Fenwick waits. No reporters, no detectives, just the prosecutor. For the first time since Harlem burned, neither man needs anything from the other. That makes the conversation more honest. 7:31. Fenwick hands Bumpy his personal effects: watch, wallet, cufflinks, keys. A clerk requires signatures, cheap pen, expensive ink. Bumpy signs. Fenwick watches. The fire case is closed against you. I know. The firearm remains under review. I know. The financial records too. Bumpy puts on his watch. Fenwick says, Graham is cooperating. Good. Hurst isn't. Expected. Fenwick studies him. You could have saved yourself 3 days. Bumpy adjusts his cuff. Yes. You could have named Sanzone immediately. Yes. You knew what I would do if I thought Italians burned my son's store. Bumpy looks at him. I knew what any father with your authority would do. Fenwick's expression tightens. And you decided you knew better. No. Bumpy puts on his hat. I decided anger needed somewhere smaller to go. 7:49. Fenwick walks with him toward the exit. Smaller? Bumpy stops. If you went straight at Batista, he closes every door. Fenwick listens. His people move money, guns disappear, witnesses disappear. Your men push harder. Bumpy continues. My people see Italians preparing for war. They prepare too. And then, someone gets nervous. Bumpy looks toward the stairs. One shot. A pause. That's all. Fenwick knows. One shot becomes 3. 3 become a body. A body becomes retaliation. Retaliation becomes raids. Raids become neighborhoods treated like crime scenes. Fenwick says, You took the attention instead. For a while. You trusted I wouldn't find enough to keep you. Bumpy looks at him. I trusted myself not to leave enough. Fenwick almost smiles. Almost. You missed the gun. Yes. That could have ruined you. Yes. No excuse. Men who accept risk do not complain when risk behaves like itself. 8:06. Fenwick opens the final door. Before Bumpy steps through, the prosecutor speaks. Johnson. Bumpy turns. You protected criminals. Bumpy's expression stays flat. No. They committed arson. Yes. Nearly killed Nathaniel Vale. Yes. And you kept their names from me. For 3 days. Fenwick looks irritated. You call that something else? Bumpy steps closer. I protected your investigation from becoming a war before you knew what you were investigating. Fenwick says nothing. Bumpy continues. Sanzone is in your custody. Yes. Graham is in your custody. Yes. Hurst is exposed. Fenwick waits. In Harlem? Bumpy asks. Fenwick does not answer. Bumpy does. Still standing. Then he walks through the door. Fenwick watches him go. Law measures results differently than streets. This time, inconveniently, both have arrived at almost the same place. 8:14. Outside, reporters wait behind barriers. Questions fly immediately. Mr. Johnson, did Fenwick apologize? Were you framed? Did Italians burn Harlem? Why were your belongings found near the scene? That question gets Bumpy's attention. He stops, turns slightly, cameras lift. Malcolm and Elias stand beyond the crowd. Both expect silence. Bumpy gives them exactly that. Then he says only, "The prosecutor did his job." Reporters shout louder. "Were you innocent?" Bumpy puts on his hat properly. "I walked out the front door. That is all." He moves toward Malcolm's car. Then Malcolm's face changes. Bumpy sees it. 3 dark sedans are parked across the street. Italian. Doors open. Men step out. Not police. Not reporters. The morning suddenly becomes narrower. Freedom lasted approximately 8 minutes. 8:17. Malcolm moves toward Bumpy. Elias does too. An Italian man raises one empty hand. No weapon. Mr. Johnson. Bumpy recognizes him, Batista's lieutenant. Malcolm whispers, "We can leave another way." Bumpy watches the sedans. No. The lieutenant approaches. "Mr. Batista would like you to come with us." Malcolm steps between them. He just spent 3 days locked up. The Italian looks at Malcolm. "This is not an arrest." "What is it?" The lieutenant returns his eyes to Bumpy. "An invitation." Bumpy glances at the cars. 3 vehicles, at least 9 men. An invitation becomes a flexible word when refusal requires mathematics. Where? You'll see. Malcolm says no. Bumpy answers instead. All right. Malcolm turns. Bumpy. Bumpy removes his gloves from one pocket, puts them on slowly. If they wanted me dead, they wouldn't need upholstery. Then he enters the rear sedan. 8:31. The cars move south. Bumpy sits between 2 Italian men. Neither speaks. No gun visible. That means nothing. Visible weapons are for persuasion. Hidden ones are for decisions. Bumpy watches streets pass. 125th Park Avenue. Traffic thickens. He does not ask again where they are going. Questions have prices. Sometimes waiting is cheaper. The man beside him finally says, "You knew." Bumpy looks over. "Knew what?" "That Sanzone did the store." "Yes." "You knew Batista." "Yes." "You could have told Fenwick." "Yes." The Italian looks forward again. 3 days. Bumpy says nothing. The man shakes his head. "My brother thinks you're crazy." "Your brother may be right." That earns the smallest smile. Enemies rarely laugh together. When they do, it is usually because death has temporarily chosen someone else. 8:58. The sedans stop outside an unmarked building. No sign. Clean windows. 2 men at the door. Bumpy exits. Looks once at the street. No Malcolm, no Elias, no friendly car. Good. If this is a problem, it belongs only to him. Inside, the hallway is quiet. Carpet, wood paneling, no music, no customers. The lieutenant leads him upstairs. At the second floor, two large doors wait. One opens. Bumpy enters. A long table, men around it, older Italians, captains, businessmen. Two faces Bumpy knows. Several he knows only by reputation. Carlo Battista stands near the far end. Nobody offers Bumpy a seat. Nobody threatens him either. The doors close behind him. Silence settles over the room. Not absence, a command. Bumpy looks at Battista. "You could have called." Battista replies, "You could have talked." Nobody smiles. 9:07, Battista walks toward the table. "Sanzone made a mistake." Bumpy says yes. "A serious one." "Yes. He believed Harlan belonged to you." "I know. He had no authority to hurt civilians." Bumpy watches him. Battista continues. "He had no authority to put fire around a man who could not get out." No excuses. That matters. Street rules are worthless if mistakes automatically erase them. Battista looks around the room. Victor answers for what he did. One older man nods, another says nothing. Battista returns his attention to Bumpy. But this room is not about Victor. Bumpy already knows. It's about me. Yes. Battista steps closer. "You had 4 names." Bumpy says nothing. "You had the prosecutor angry." Silence. "You had everything needed to point him at us." Battista pauses, when instead, you pointed him at yourself. The room waits for an explanation. Bumpy does not give one. Not yet. 9:16. An older man at the head of the table finally speaks. His name is Salvatore Madeira, 64. A syndicate elder whose voice rarely needs volume. "You are not one of us." Bumpy looks at him. "I noticed." A few men shift. Madeira does not smile. "You have fought our interests." "Yes." "You have taken business from our people." "Yes." "You have embarrassed men sitting in this room." Bumpy looks around. "Probably." Now someone almost laughs. Madeira raises one finger. Silence returns. "And if tomorrow gives you reason, you will do it again." Bumpy answers, "Yes." Madeira nods. "Good." That answer surprises nobody except perhaps the younger men. Respect does not require pretending enemies have become friends. That would cheapen it. Madeira leans forward. "We are not thanking you." Bumpy waits. "We are recognizing what you did." Different words, different debt. 9:24. Madeira speaks slowly. "You could have purchased peace for yourself with our names." Bumpy says nothing. "You did not." A pause. "You could have used Fenwick's anger to damage our territory." Nothing. "You did not." Madeira looks at Battista, then back to Bumpy. "You took 3 days because you understood something some of our younger men forgot." Bumpy's eyes remain steady. Madeira continues. "Rules matter most when breaking them would benefit you." The room is completely quiet now. Then Madeira says, "You are our enemy." A beat. "But you are an enemy who keeps his mouth closed when speaking would make the whole street weaker." Bumpy looks at him. Madeira finishes. "You are not ours, but you are a man who knows how to keep his mouth shut and play by the rules, and more than that." Another pause. "You are our enemy, but we have no right not to respect you." 9:32, Battista steps forward. "The syndicate gives you its respect." No applause. Applause would make it theater. "This is accounting." Battista continues. "That does not end anything between us." Bumpy replies, "Good." A few heads turn. Battista almost smiles. "Our businesses remain our businesses." "Yes." "Your territory remains your concern." "Yes." "And where those concerns meet?" Bumpy finishes. "We'll still have problems." "Yes." Battista nods. "But your territory will be treated with greater restraint." There it is. not surrender, not alliance, not friendship. Restraint, a word worth more than a handshake in certain rooms. Bumpy looks around the table. I didn't spend 3 days for your respect. Madeira replies, that's probably why you have it. Nobody adds anything. The point does not need decoration. Some victories make noise, others simply change how enemies pronounce your name. 9:47 Bumpy is offered coffee. He accepts. That matters more than it appears. 5 minutes earlier, he was an outsider standing at a closed door. Now he drinks at their table. Not as family, never that. As recognized opposition. Batista sits across from him. Why? Bumpy looks at the cup. You already know. I know what you did. Batista leans forward. I asked why. Bumpy takes one sip. Because Fenwick would have hit you angry. Batista waits. You would have answered angry. Another pause. My people would have seen your answer. Batista nods slowly. And answered. Yes. Bumpy places the cup down. Then nobody is running Harlem. Who is? Fear. Batista understands. Fear is a terrible boss. It pays badly, kills employees, burns the office. Bumpy stands. I prefer you. Batista raises an eyebrow. Bumpy adds, as an enemy. This time Batista does smile. 10:11. The return car contains only 2 Italians. A courtesy, or a statement. Bumpy watches Manhattan move past the window. 3 days ago, the Italians were enemies. They still are. That's important. Stories become childish when respect magically erases competition. Tomorrow, they may fight over bookmakers. Next month, a trucking route. Next year, a neighborhood. Nothing fundamental has changed, and yet something has. There are enemies who believe you will do anything to win. There are enemies who know exactly what you will not do. The second relationship is stronger because boundaries create prediction. Prediction creates stability. Stability creates business. Bumpy did not save the Italians. He saved the structure that allowed both sides to remain enemies without turning Harlem into a battlefield. There is no medal for that. Only consequences. Sometimes consequences are enough. 10:46. The sedan stops outside Bumpy's office. Malcolm is waiting on the sidewalk. Elias stands behind him. The Italian driver opens Bumpy's door. Bumpy exits. The driver says, Mr. Johnson. Nothing more. The sedan leaves. Malcolm watches it disappear. Where did they take you? Meeting. With Batista? And others. Malcolm's expression changes. What did they want? To talk. 3 cars for a conversation? Bumpy walks toward the entrance. Some people use punctuation. Malcolm follows. Inside, employees become quiet when Bumpy enters. 3 days. His chair is where he left it. His desk too. The room feels smaller. Or perhaps Bumpy has returned carrying something invisible. Elias closes the door. Malcolm does not sit. He has been waiting 3 days for one answer. Now he intends to get it. 11:03. Why? Malcolm asks. Bumpy removes his hat, places it on the desk. No answer. Malcolm steps closer. You planted evidence against yourself. Yes. You let Fenwick tear through our businesses. Yes. You sat in a cell. Yes. You refuse to give up men who are our enemies. Yes. Malcolm spreads his hands. Why? Bumpy sits. Elias remains near the door. Bumpy looks at both men. For 3 days, he withheld the answer because explanation would have changed behavior. Now behavior no longer needs controlling. First, Bumpy says, I am a man of principle. Malcolm waits. Those Italians made a mistake. A bad one, but they didn't come into Harlem intending to burn a prosecutor's son's store. That doesn't make them innocent. I didn't say it did. Bumpy leans back. And second, Now comes the part that mattered more. 11:12. If Fenwick knew immediately, Bumpy says, he would have gone through every Italian door in New York angry. Malcolm nods. They would have panicked. Yes. They would have hidden things. Yes. Maybe killed people. Bumpy looks at him. Probably. Elias understands before Malcolm does. Bumpy continues. Then our people see Italians moving guns and money. We prepare. Yes. They think we're preparing to hit them. Yes. Malcolm goes quiet. Bumpy taps one finger on the desk. One misunderstanding becomes two. Tap. Two become 10. Tap. Then somebody shoots. Silence. And after that? Bumpy looks toward the window. Fenwick doesn't investigate one burned store anymore. He gestures toward Harlem outside. He investigates all of this. Malcolm finally sees the whole calculation. Not Italians, not Bumpy, the neighborhood between them. 11:19. Bumpy stands and walks to the window. People think power means beating your enemy. Traffic moves below. Sometimes. He watches a delivery truck stop. A woman opens a shop. Two boys run across the street. Sometimes power means keeping your enemy strong enough that nobody else gets to choose what replaces him. Malcolm says, Atlas. Bumpy nods. We didn't know about Atlas when you made the decision. No. Then how? Bumpy turns. Because I knew what disorder costs. A pause. Somebody wanted Italians and us fighting while government tore through both sides. He looks back outside. I didn't know who. But you knew somebody would profit. Someone always does, Elias asks. So you protected the balance. Bumpy considers the word. Yes, then corrects it. I protected our right to keep fighting on our own terms. That is closer. Much closer. 11:27. Malcolm sits finally. You could have told us. No. Why not? Because you would have tried to protect me. Malcolm starts to object, then remembers Elias refusing to plant the evidence, his own meeting with Batista, his attempts to stop the plan. Bumpy sees the answer on his face. If you understood too early, you would have changed something. Malcolm looks down. And if the gun had buried you? Then I miscalculated. That's all? No. Bumpy's voice becomes quieter. Then you would have had to survive my mistake. The room stills. No myth. No claim of perfection. That matters. Bumpy took a calculated risk. Calculated does not mean safe. It means the danger has been measured and accepted. Malcolm asks, was it worth it? Bumpy looks outside again. No police convoys, no gunfire, no bodies. Yes, the answer comes without pride. Just accounting. 11:41. Elias asks about the syndicate. What exactly did they say? Bumpy reaches for the coffee pot. They respect me. Malcolm laughs. After all this? Yes. They going to stop fighting us? No. Give territory back? No. Stay out of our business? No. Malcolm looks confused. Then what did we get? Bumpy pours coffee. Restraint. Elias understands. Malcolm takes longer. Bumpy explains, they know there are lines I won't cross just because crossing them helps me. He pours a second cup. And now I know they understand the value of those lines. Malcolm asks. So nothing changes. Bumpy looks at him. Everything changes a little. That is how durable power usually moves, not with declarations, degrees. A door opens slightly. A gun stays holstered 1 second longer. A man calls before acting. History often hides inside those seconds. 12:08. Samuel Fenwick visits Nathaniel Vale. The clerk is sitting up right now, still bandaged, still facing months of recovery. Fenwick tells him Victor has been charged. Others will follow. Nathaniel listens. And Johnson? Not for the fire. Nathaniel looks relieved. Fenwick notices. You thought he did it? I didn't know. Neither did I. That admission costs Fenwick something. Good. Truth should cost. Nathaniel asks, why did his name come up? Fenwick looks toward the window. Because somebody wanted all of us looking in the wrong direction. Did it work? Fenwick thinks about 3 days, raids, Hearst, Atlas, Bumpy, Batista. No, then corrects himself. For a while. Nathaniel nods. Fenwick leaves. Outside the room, he stops beside a trash bin. The original newspaper headline is folded under someone's coffee cup. Bumpy Johnson link probed. Ink remembers accusation longer than correction. That too is a kind of damage. 1244. Victor Senzone remains in custody. No rescue, no disappearance, no convenient street justice. Batista sends him an attorney. Nothing else. Rules work both ways. Victor made the mistake. Victor carries it. Angelo, Peter, and Rocco are arrested before evening. The fire case becomes what it should have been from the beginning. A crime, not a war. Atlas offices are searched. Financial records seized. Property deals frozen. Graham continues talking. Daniel Hearst begins negotiating. The gray hat man remains missing. Not every shadow needs to be caught for daylight to matter. Harlem returns to its rhythm. Slowly. A club opens. A bookmaker takes bets. A truck unloads liquor. Italian men watch Bumpy's corners. Bumpy's men watch theirs. Nobody waves. Good. Peace was never the goal. Balance was. And balance is not kindness. It is pressure applied equally enough that nobody falls. 1316. Bumpy walks through Harlem with Malcolm. No guards immediately beside them. People notice. Some nod. Some stare. One man asks, "You all right, Bumpy?" Bumpy answers, "I'm walking." The man smiles. That becomes enough. At the corner, Malcolm sees 2 Italian collectors across the street. They see Bumpy. For a moment, everyone watches everyone. Then one Italian gives a small nod. Not friendship, recognition. Bumpy returns it. They continue in opposite directions. Malcolm watches. That new? Yes. You like it? No. Why not? Bumpy keeps walking. Respect makes enemies more careful. That sounds useful. It is. Then, Bumpy looks ahead. Careful enemies are harder to beat. Malcolm smiles. There it is. Nothing sentimental. No brotherhood, no miracle. Just 2 sides understanding each other better than before. A beautiful rivalry of force. Still dangerous, now disciplined. 1348. They stop outside the remains of Harlan Fine Goods. Boards cover the windows. Smoke stains remain above the brick. Nathaniel's blood is gone from the sidewalk. City's clean evidence faster than memory. Malcolm asks, "You think it was worth all this?" Bumpy looks at the building. No. Malcolm turns. Bumpy continues. The fire wasn't worth anything. A pause. The question is, what you do after somebody has already paid the price. He looks at the burned doorway. You don't get to choose whether the mistake happened. Another pause. You choose how many mistakes follow it. Malcolm says nothing. Bumpy walks away. Behind him, workers unload lumber for repairs. Hammer against wood. Regular rhythm, not gunshots. That distinction is why 3 days mattered. Nobody on the sidewalk knows it. They do not need to. The best control is often invisible to the people protected by it. 1422. Back at the office, Bumpy opens the ledger interrupted 3 days earlier. Same page, same columns. Money in, money out. Numbers waiting patiently while men create chaos around them. Malcolm stands at the door. One more question. Bumpy does not look up. What? If you had known from the beginning it was Atlas. Bumpy writes one number. Would you have done the same thing? The pen stops. Bumpy thinks. Then, yes. Even knowing Fenwick would hold you? Yes. Even knowing the syndicate might never thank you? Bumpy looks up. I didn't do it for thanks. Then for what? Bumpy closes the ledger. Outside, Harlem moves. Italian territory, Bumpy territory, police territory. Nobody owns all of it. That is precisely why it survives. Bumpy says, an enemy who plays by rules is sometimes worth more than a friend who doesn't. Malcolm nods. Now he understands. Not the Italians, not the prosecutor, the rule. 1431 Bumpy opens the ledger again. The conversation is finished. No ceremony, no final speech. Power returns to routine because routine is where power lives. 3 days earlier, 4 men entered the wrong store. They carried gasoline, bad information, and enough stupidity to shake an entire neighborhood. They expected a message to Bumpy. Instead, they created a test for everyone. The Italians tested their rules. Fenwick tested his anger. Malcolm tested his loyalty. Bumpy tested his own calculation. Nobody passed cleanly. That is not how real tests work. But Harlem is still standing. The Italians remain across the line. Bumpy remains on his side. Tomorrow they may compete again. They probably will. But now both sides know something they did not know before. A boundary is strongest when your enemy could cross it and chooses not to.